Hi, welcome to today's session. Our topic for today is about creating groups and applying that group to a certain activity. Like, for example, activity one is a group activity. And, like, for example, activity, let's just say a final project is a group activity. So, how do you create the group and groupings of that particular activity, right? So, first things first, of course, you have to log into your Soul account, and of course you have to open or go inside your course. Now, as for me, I will use the same sample course that I have been using from the past session, and that is the sample subject. So I will open sample subject, and to create groups, you just have to go to the course settings. So just click the gear icon in the upper right corner of your window. And from here, go to users and go to groups. So this is the main tab of group, right? So you have the groups, and then you have the groupings, and then you have overview. So before you create the groups, make sure to create a groupings first. So basically, groupings is just a group of groups. Like, for example, if you want to create the groups for activity one or assignment one, you have to create a groupings that will contain all the groups within this particular activity. So, like, for example, I want to create an assignment, a group assignment. Let's just say this is, for example, assignment one, and this is a group activity, right? So first, I'm going to create the groupings. I will go to groupings, and from here, I will click create grouping, and then I will give it a name. This is assignment one. And immediately after giving it a name, just save changes. So you should be able to see that I have now one grouping and the name is assignment one, and currently there are no groups assigned to this particular grouping because we haven't created any groups yet, right? So what's important from this process or from this step is that we created the groupings, and later on, once we created the groups, we will go back to groupings to add those groups in this particular grouping. Okay, so that's the first step. You go to groups and then you create groupings. So the groupings will contain or will hold all the groups for a particular activity. So let's go back to groups and we will now create the groups. So there are two ways in terms of creating groups in our course or in our subject. So the first one is the manual, wherein the teacher will create the group. So to create a group manually, you simply click create group button here on the bottom part, create group, and then what's the name of the groups? For example, this is group one or assignment one, group one. Assignment one, group one. And then once done, click save changes. So there, you now have one group and it says zero, meaning there's no member added to this particular group. Let's try to create another group. So it's the same process, create group, and this is assignment one, group number two. Okay, once done with the name, just save. And I'll try to create another one, create group, assignment one, group three, right? So once done, just click save changes. So currently we now have three groups in my course: assignment one, group one, assignment one, group two, and assignment one, group three. Now, if you will notice on the right side of the assignment name, you have the parenthesis and then you have the zero number. So again, zero stands for there's no member assigned to this particular group. So currently, we cannot assign any member because this group has no enrolled users yet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna enroll random users and add those users to those groups. So I will just go back to the settings, and I will go to enrolled users, and I will just be adding random participants. So in my course, right? So there. So I now added 4 participants in my group. So I will go to back to users, go to settings, users, and then groups. So right now, I can now assign participants to those groups. So for you to add members or participants to a particular group, you just have to select the group. And then if you'll notice, you have a button here that says add or remove users. So like for example, I want to add or remove users to group 1. I'll just select group 1 and then click add or remove users. On the next page, you will then choose which among the participants of this particular course will be added to this group. So like for example, I want to add student sample to group 1. I'll just select student sample and then click the add button. So there. So I will just go back to groups. And if you'll notice, group 1, now it says 1, meaning I now have 1 member in group 1, which is student sample. Okay, so I will add a member to group 2. So select group 2, add remove users, and then I will add guest 1, and then the test teacher in group number 2, there, and then back to groups. So right now, group 2 has 2 members. If I'll click group 2, it will show guest 1 and test teacher. So those are the members of group number 2. And if I'll click group 1, I only have 1 member, which is student sample. So I will add members to group number 3, select group 3 and add or remove users. And then the guest user will be added to group number 3. And that's it. Back to groups. And that's how you add users to your group. So what if, for example, you want to remove users? Like for example, group 2, I have 2 users, right? So what if I want to remove guest 1 from group number 2? So I'll just click group number 2 and then go to add remove users. And here on the left side, I'll just select guest 1 and then remove. Okay. So if the adding process is selecting participants on the right side and clicking the add button, to remove is exactly the opposite. You select the participant in the left side and then you click the remove button in the middle. So that's how you add or remove users in any groups in your course or in your class. So as you can see, assignment 1, group 1, 2, and 3 has only 1 participant each group, or 1 member per group. Okay, so that's the first way of creating groups, the manual way. So what if you want to create groupings, but this time instead of the teacher creating the groups, you want that the system will generate the groups? How do you do that? So if you notice, if you scroll down, you have auto create groups. So you simply click this one, and it will open up the auto create groups settings. Like for example, the naming scheme. So what should be the naming scheme of your groups? Let's say this is assignment 1 and then group number. So for the naming scheme, it's very important that we have the number sign and the at sign. So basically the number sign represents numbers. So like for example, if the naming scheme is assignment 1 group 1, then the name of the groups that will be generated will be assignment 1 group 1, assignment 1 group 2, assignment 1 group 3. And if I will use the at sign, so the naming scheme or the name of the groups that will be generated will be assignment 1 group A, assignment 1 group B, and so on and so forth. Right? So that's the naming scheme. Now, auto create based on what condition? Is it the number of groups or members per group? So if you want to create groups based on the number of groups, then you can choose the default one, which is the number of groups. Or if you want to create groups based on members per group, then you can also select this one. But in my case, I'll just select number of groups because I want to create two groups for my class, right? So number of groups and then two groups. The next is group messaging. Do you want to have like a group chat for this particular grouping? If you want, you can select yes. But if you don't want, just leave it to default as no, right? So that's basically it. Just the four primary fields that you need to change in terms of auto create groups, and then you scroll down and submit. Now, once you click submit, it will ask you to enter a grouping name because again, this is required. So you have an option. Is this a new grouping or are you gonna group these groups to assignment one? Remember that earlier we created an assignment one grouping, right? Now, if this is a new grouping, you can choose new grouping, or you can also use the existing grouping, which is an assignment one. So for example, this is a new grouping. I will just change the naming scheme to, let's just say project, right? So this is project group A, B, and depending on the conditions that I declared here, right? So here the grouping name is project. So I'll click submit, and it should now generate two groups based on the conditions that I declared earlier, that I want the system to create two groups for me. So it says here project group A and project group B. Both groups has two participants or two members. And if I'll go to groupings, I will also have project grouping, which now has group A, project group A, and project group B. Now take note that for the assignment one, it still says no for groups. So how do you add groups to a particular grouping? So you simply go to grouping and then here assignment. If you take a look at the right side, to add groups to a particular grouping, just click this icon. When you hover your mouse, it says show groups in grouping. So click that icon and you simply select the groups to be added to this particular grouping. So I will select the three groups, assignment one, group one, two, and three. Select and then add. Okay, so right now, these groups are now added to the grouping assignment one. So I will go back to groupings and it should now see assignment one and we have three groups. Okay, so how do you apply the groupings or the groups that we created in in an assignment, for example? How do you do that? So let me just create an assignment real quick. So this is just a a short demonstration of how you create an assignment. So, like for example, in lesson number two, right? So go to lesson two, and then to create an assignment, create anyway. Just don't focus on how do we create an assignment because we do have a separate discussion in terms of creating assignment. So create learning activity, and then I will go to assignment. So to apply the groups or groupings that we created in the assignment settings, you have group submission. Here, by default, it says no. So you can change it. If this is a group assignment or a group activity, just change this to yes. And what you will do is you simply choose what grouping is to be used for this particular assignment. You see, you have two groupings, right? Assignment one and project. So which grouping or what group are you going to use for this particular assignment? If, for example, if you want to use assignment one grouping, you can do that, or project grouping, you can do that. So once done, you simply set the assignment and click save. So what's good about grouping is that if this is a group activity, like for example, you have 20 members per group, so only one member of that particular group needs to submit, and it's also considered as submitted for the entire group. And the teacher will only grade one member of that particular group, any member of that particular group, and it's considered as graded for the entire group. So that's how you create groups and apply groups and groupings in an activity.